Mechanical brakes. The brake pedal is not on the floor. It's right here. That's the brakes.
Did the little bear friend come standard to the car?
The little bear is here because we want to make sure that kids get help getting into the car and getting out of the car. It's easy enough to fall without help, so we like to have somebody there to help people and help people out. So once Artie Russo went end over end with this thing at Thompson Speedway in Connecticut, it went into Eddie Perkins' basement. At the time, he was running a marina in Essex, Massachusetts. Didn't have time to fix the car. Well, he sold the marina looking for something to do. He restored the car to the way it was back in the day, and there it is. This is one of the few cars that Bentley Warren drove that's still around. We've got the plastic on the tires because look at the chains that were here. You sit on that, you're going to have a bloody butt.
Yeah.
For sure. What's the story with 3 wiper blades? Well, the car in front of you kicking up a lot of water and snow and sleet and that sort of thing. You kind of have to have a way to see where you're going. That's the car that won Martinsville in 2018, and Joey calls that the most important car in his career because going into Martinsville, he was not qualified for the championship race the next weekend at Homestead, Miami, Florida. He won Martinsville, and as you can see, he did a lot of pushing and shoving in Martinsville in order to accomplish that win. Got into the race at Homestead with a chance to win the championship. He won Homestead, he won the championship too. If you notice, the right front wheel isn't in much contact with the racetrack either, and that's the way Ollie drove. Elbow up, flat on the gas. Fans loved it. He was just enormously popular. We have one employee here, one, and everybody else, including me, volunteers. We get no pay. That's just, do it because we love it.
Well, it's Sunday. It's supposed to be race day, and it was supposed to be a new track we checked off our list. But on a day where it's coming an absolute monsoon all day long, we find ourselves in a unique place. We're in the New England Racing Museum here with my wife, Claudia.
Yes.
Yeah, my racing buddy, as I call it. And we're going to check out this cool museum and show you guys what this place is all about.
Yeah, we just got to the track to pick up our media credentials, and as soon as we were doing that, got called the race. So it's probably about 11. They're like right down the street from the Speedway.
Yeah, from New Hampshire Motor
Speedway. Like
Speedway.
probably less than 5 minutes. So it's great. A lot of probably people, fans that were supposed to go to the race, checking us out. So we're going to take you along with us.
Yep, let's go check it out. So right off the bat, from a media sense here, got to have a lot of respect for a native of New England, Ken Squire. Got a good section here devoted to him. And then over just to the right of him, a NASCAR Hall of Famer, Mike Stefanik, well known for his modified successes in the Northeast, and they have a nice little section laid out for him. Here's one of his trophies from Thompson Speedway in 1997 at the Sunoco 300. I have an appreciation for models of any kind, and this is actually a handmade model of George Rice's 1947 championship-winning midget. This is donated by a man named Barry Barnes. It's a pretty cool model to see they've gotten here. All right, so as much as I would love to show you guys more about this place and give you a tour myself, I found a better tour guide for this place. Let's go meet up with Dick Berggren, and he's going to give us a tour of the New England Racing Museum.
This is called a big car to differentiate it from the midgets. Back in the 30s, 40s, and early 50s, there were cars that were a little bit smaller than this. And, we've got one of those at number 17. That's a midget, and this is a big car. Mechanical brakes. The brake pedal is not on the floor. It's right here. That's the brakes. 2-wheel brakes. That's all. No brakes on the front end whatsoever. It's got knobby tires. That's to grip the dirt tracks that the car ran on. It's a Model B Ford engine with a Miller conversion cylinder head. Homemade intake manifold. Homemade exhaust manifold. No roll bar. No roll bar at all. The gas tank is full of fuel that's pressurized, no fuel pump. So the driver going down the straightaway would pump up more pressure in the fuel tank so that the fuel pump that way never breaks.
Wow.
So this car got upside down a couple of times. Once with my childhood hero, Art Russo. He was the guy that got me involved in all of this. I watched a race at Stafford Springs Speedway at age 8, and I said, that's my driver right there.
I'm going to ask a dumb question. Getting upside down a car like this, I mean, how...
Usually you're dead.
Yeah.
Ordinarily you're dead. Arthur did it 4 times and survived every one.
Wow.
The most dramatic of which was a race at Westboro Speedway, where in the qualifying races, the heat races, dropped the green flag and the guy in front of him didn't go. Art went over the guy's left rear wheel, end over end, and wound up laying beside the car in the infield. They wanted him to go to the hospital. He said, no, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm going to hang around here in case they get the car fixed. And they did. The crew went to work on the car. They got it fixed. He had to start dead last to the feature because he hadn't qualified. Started dead last, passed every car and won it, and then they took him to the hospital where he spent the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
So,
Did the little bear friend come standard to the car?
The little bear is here because we want to make sure that kids get help getting into the car and getting out of the car. It's easy enough to fall without help, so we like to have somebody there to help people and help people out. So, car next to it, that's another sprint car and a super modified. Back in the day, there were track operators that thought if you put roll cages or roll bars on the cars, you'd have more dead drivers. Why? Because they drive over their heads. So they wouldn't let you use a roll bar. So you can see right over the rear wheel there's the seat for the roll bar. We're lucky to have this car because the guy that owned it, when the car became obsolete, it was too heavy, it just didn't fit with what was going on in sprint car racing anymore. Nobody wanted to buy it. He found a guy that had a barn. He put the car in the barn. A few years later, he heard the barn had fallen in a snowstorm and everything had been taken to the dump. And he assumed his car was along with it. About 10 years later, he was at a yard sale. And the guy came up to him and he said, "Are you Skip Matzak?" He said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, damn, when are you going to come pick up your car? I've had it like 15 years in my barn." Skip said, "No, it's not my car because my car was in a barn that fell in a snowstorm." Well, that was a different barn. I've still got your car. Within a couple hours, that thing was on a trailer and on the way to restoration. This is super modified, built by Eddie Perkins, who once Artie Russo went end over end with this thing at Thompson Speedway in Connecticut. It went into Eddie Perkins' basement. At the time, he was running a marina in Essex, Massachusetts. Didn't have time to fix the car. Well, he sold the marina looking for something to do. He restored the car to the way it was back in the day, and there it is. This is one of the few cars that Bentley Warren drove that's still around. We're having a special event for Bentley here on the 17th of September. We're going to honor him. He's probably the most successful super modified driver New England has ever produced. So it's going to be a fun time for sure. That mural up there shows some of the things that Bentley did, some of the races that he was in, starting with that little old Ford that got all banged up. He won on the dirt, he won on the asphalt, he won at Oswego, he won at Star Speedway, he won everywhere. And this is closer to what today's super modifieds look like. If you saw one of today's cars, unless you're a sophisticated observer, you wouldn't be able to really tell the difference between them. But a big block engine with the engine hanging over on the left side, direct drive. So there's no clutch, no transmission, saves weight. So what you do, put the car in gear, and the truck gets behind, pushes the car, you get up to a little speed, turn on the fuel, then you turn on the ignition, and it lights. And you're in high gear. That's the only choice you got. You're in high gear. This was a very successful car to the point that it won 2 championships in the touring series called the International Super Modified Series. It also won 2 championships at Loudon, Hampshire Speedway. And the guy that drove this car came in one day and I said, "Do you have any trophies left over from when you were racing?" He said, "I think I got a couple." I said, "We'd sure like to have those to go with the car." He brought all these. So, yeah. Russ Wood is his name, and he's still racing after all these years. That one raced on the ice.
Wow.
And that was a very successful car. We've got the plastic on the tires because look at the chains that were here. You sit on that, you're going to have a bloody butt.
Yeah.
For sure. But Alan Dara ordinarily is here when we have open hours. I don't know where he is today, but this is his car, and he raced this for years and years on the ice here in New Hampshire. A lot of people wonder what's the story with 3 wiper blades. Well, the car in front of you kicking up a lot of water and snow and sleet and that sort of thing. You kind of have to have a way to see where you're going. So he had 3 wiper blades in it. This car ran for almost 40 years.
Wow.
In various configurations. It started out with a flathead Ford engine. Now it's got a 289 Ford in it, and Alan has retired from racing. I don't know why. He still looks good enough to be able to win. Back in the late 40s and the early 1950s, you could run a car like this in New England 7 nights a week. And there were times when you could run it twice on Sunday afternoon and Sunday night as well. This is a famous car. It was called the Koopman Offie. That's an Offenhauser engine. The Offenhauser engine was a very, very successful engine. It got to the point where you either had to have an Offenhauser engine or you were going to lose the race. A lot of its advantage came from the fact that the engine had a lot of compression. So much so it never had a cylinder head. The engine block included the cylinder head. And the only way you could get the pistons and the crankshaft and the rods in, turn the engine upside down and dump everything in. There's very few people today who can build or rebuild one of these Offie engines. They've all died off one after another. But this was a very successful car. Several people drove it, and everybody who drove it won with the car. Joey Logano's car over here. He's going to win tomorrow, I think. Either that or maybe another one of the New England drivers is going to win.
Truex, maybe?
That's the car that won Martinsville in 2018, and Joey calls that the most important car in his career because going into Martinsville, he was not qualified for the championship race the next weekend at Homestead, Miami, Florida. He won Martinsville, and as you can see, he did a lot of pushing and shoving at Martinsville in order to accomplish that win. Got into the race at Homestead with a chance to win the championship. He won Homestead. He won the championship too. He won his very first Cup race here at the Hampshire Motor Speedway. If you look high up in the wall, that's the trophy. Joey told us we could have that trophy for as long as we wanted it. We put it up high so nobody could steal it. A couple of drag cars here. This was driven by a female driver, actually, nicknamed Country Girl, unfortunately just passed away. Jungle Jim Lieberman ran this one. His entire crew was his girlfriend, Pam. So he was Jungle Jim and she was Jungle Pam, and together they were a very popular duo. One of the several cars that Jeff Bodine drove throughout New England. This one was very, very successful. Lee Allard and his wife Candy owned the car, and Bodine was just winning with it. He blew the engine one night, and Allard thought he was driving the car too hard and fired him after so many wins. I don't think the car won after drove that out of it. And then there's our boy Dave Dion, who was in here yesterday. Dave drove this car in the old Busch North Series and won lots and lots of races with it. He and his brothers did a low dollar deal. They had very little money, and they beat the teams that had tons of money, so he was enormously popular in the grandstand. And Jimmy Martell, this is a replica of the car that he won so many features with at Star Speedway. It's a Chevelle body, and the car weighs almost nothing. That was the big secret to Jimmy's success with this car. That and he was a very, very good driver as well. This is a 1932 MG. It was built by the factory in Europe with the idea of if they won races, maybe they could sell a bunch of cars, and it does seem to work. MG was around for a very, very long time. Peter Ross is the owner. Peter is well into his 80s, and he keeps retiring as a driver. He retired 2 years ago and said, "That's it. I'm all done. You can have the car. Keep it as long as you like." And sure enough, along about September, the phone rang. It's Peter. I really want to race the car one more time. He's promised us he's not going to race this year, but wait and see. We may see Peter racing. This is the year of the MG at Lime Rock Park, which was a vintage celebration of the Labor Day weekend. And I got a feeling my phone is going to ring about a month before that. Hi, it's Peter, and I think I've got to race one more time. One of my favorite cars here is this one. The car was built by Auto Dynamics, which was in a partnership arrangement with Sam Posey. And this was a Can-Am car, which at the time this car was built was the most important road racing series in the United States. So they built this car hoping to be able to compete with people like Roger Penske, Ford Motor Company, and all the rest of it. It's got a straight axle front end, which is very unusual for a car like this, to have a straight axle front end. This is a team car, the second car that was built. They had it at Lime Rock one day and they were testing it, practicing with it. And they only had a half dozen guys. I mean, that was it, a small group of people. Something's going on. Flash flood warning in effect for this area until 6 p.m. This is a dangerous and life-threatening situation. Do not attempt to travel unless you are fleeing an area subject to flooding or under an evacuation notice. Well, that's pretty heavy duty, isn't it?
That just means more people to come to the museum today.
I guess. So anyway, they were testing the car at Lime Rock, and one of the suspension pieces failed. The car dug into the track itself and flipped over, and poor Sam was trapped in it, upside down, and you could hear the fuel pumps, the electric fuel pumps going tick, 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 tick. There were two of them, and he could not remember which way the switch had to flip to turn them off. So we had to turn one up and one down, thinking it'd be only half as much fuel if it was going to be pumping the fuel out. The crew went looking for him. He didn't come around the racetrack, so they jumped in the truck and they're off looking for him. They find the car, it's upside down. Where's Sam? He was walking back to the pits again. So they got mad at each other. Sam was mad that the car failed. The guy that built the car said there's no way the car failed. It's your lousy driving that caused that thing to flip over. And they hardly talked to each other for almost 20 years until we managed to get the two of them together right here where I'm standing. And they spent about an hour and a half lying to each other about how fast they went, how important the driver was, how important the chassis was. And it was so much fun to see and hear them having that exchange and conversation. This is new to us. This is an Ollie Silva modified with a Pinto body, which were very popular. Ollie was more known for super modified racing. And that picture up there, I took at Star Speedway, goodness, about 40 years ago. And you'll notice that the left front wheel is way up. If you notice, the right front wheel isn't in much contact with the racetrack either. And that's the way Ollie drove. Elbow up, flat on the gas. Fans loved him. He was just enormously popular. You look at the picture a little bit to the left, and there's Don McLaren, his arch rival, and they are side by side. Look at Ollie's elbows. He is on the gas at that thing. McLaren was the anti-hero. He was the guy that the fans loved to boo. Race was done and over with, and McLaren lost. He wanted to have a fight with you. And race was over. Ollie would just smile for the cameras. So it was a cool little deal. And right over here we got some of Ollie's trophies. And the thing I like about that display is the pictures show him getting the trophy. So there's the trophy, and there's the photograph of Ollie the day that he won that trophy.
Your sizes are different.
Oh
yeah. He liked to look at the size of the left front in that one.
Like a bicycle tire.
Tiny little left front tire.
Yeah, you see it right here, that one's a lot bigger than that one.
Yeah. And what that does, if you're on the straightaway, what it does is basically puts a lot of weight on the right front, which you want for steering, and a lot of weight on the left rear, which you want for traction. So that was one of his chassis. It's not much of a secret. You could look at the car and everybody could see that the left front was really, really small. And when I raced, I did the same thing. I always had a small left front. You can see it in the picture at the bottom with the checkered flag. Tiny little left front tire, great big right front tire. Frank Grimaldi's car. This car may have more laps on it than anything else that we have here. There's a little video there of Frank behind the wheel. Frank is one of the members of our board of directors. And this car one day at Lime Rock, this one also went out of control, end over end, side over side. You looked at the pictures and you'd say, well, there's no way he could rebuild that. But he did. And he kept racing and racing and racing. And he finally got to the point where he decided he had enough. Car number is 80. He was 80 years old when he arrived at that conclusion. He decided he wanted to race until he was 80, and he did. So very happy to have this car here. It's got a lot of history to it because of the racing. A little story about this museum and where it came from. I would say 30 years ago, when we used to have a vintage celebration here at the Hampshire Motor Speedway. Then it was the Hampshire International Raceway. A guy came up to me named Vic Urardi and said, Berggren, we got a real problem. Oh, what's the matter, Vic? Well, Grandpa dies and got all these photo books and nobody knows what to do with them, and the family says, who cares about these pictures of race cars and race car drivers? They go in the trash. Cars become uncompetitive. Nobody wants to buy them. They get cut up, sold off. Nobody sees them anymore. He said, we need a place to keep those cars and keep our history. We need a place where the pictures can be so that people can look at the pictures and know what people were doing 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We need a museum, and Berggren, you're the guy to build it. Now, I don't know how many people he said that same sermon to that day, but I was the guy that said, oh, okay, all right. At the time, I was doing a lot of television. I worked for a whole bunch of different networks, and I didn't have time to build a museum. But Bob Beer owned the racetrack, and he had gobs of money, and I thought, well, maybe he would build this museum. So I sat down and I wrote a prospectus and brought it in one day to Bob, and I said, Bob, you need to build a museum at the racetrack. He said, I don't need a museum. I'm so old I am a museum. And he threw me out of his office, literally. He said, go on, get out of here. I got things to do today. That's as far as we got until my television career ended. And when the TV career ended, I thought, well, let's see if I can raise some money and maybe put something together, make something happen. So we formed a corporation. We got the 501c3 so that we're a nonprofit organization. And then I went around with my hand out, trying to find whatever I could for money. And the thing that was a real surprise was that people were willing not only to give us money to help build this building, but local contractors were willing to help too. So in the very first part of the construction, we started doing the site work. So we had Bentley Warren's bulldozers pushing the dirt around here, trying to get the dirt where it had to be, and finally it just got too cold. We got into the winter, we couldn't do anything. So I called Bentley, I said, what do we do? He said, well, you can dig the well. Find yourself a well driller. You gotta have water, so get yourself a well driller. So I checked around, I was told the best well driller in the area is Capital Well Clean Water. So how much is it gonna cost to dig a well here? Somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000, Capital told me. I said, okay, we had just about that much money left. And they drilled the well, and it was $13,000. And the bill said, don't pay this bill, it's our donation. And that was the start of it. The concrete you're standing on is 8 inches thick. It was donated. The covering for it, the coating for it is a $50,000 coating. It was donated. Even our garage door was donated. All the labor to do the heating and cooling here was donated. All the labor to do the electrical work, and we had an electrician in here for a month and a half wiring this place up. We paid nothing. The only thing we paid for were the fixtures. That was it. I had a guy call me one day and he said, who's doing your sheetrock? And I told him. He said, well, how much is it going to cost? I said, well, he's estimating $13,000. I think I'll pay that. And he handed me a check for $13,000. The guy, though, that really got this museum running was Bentley Warren. We were having trouble. I mean, at the rate I was going, I was pretty sure we were not going to be able to get enough money to ever build this thing. And Bentley called one day and said, how's it going? And I told him that. And I said, I don't think we're going to make it, Bentley. He said, I think I can help. And he showed up with a check for $40,000. And he said, you tell everybody. I said, whoa, Bentley, you're a very private person. You don't want people knowing when you help somebody else out. He said, Berggren, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Well, he had built 2 businesses from the ground up, which were remarkably successful. Bentley Warren Trucking in Ipswich, Massachusetts is one of the biggest sand and gravel operations on the East Coast. He started with one truck that was highly leveraged, and it's just an enormous operation now. He bought a little 1-room bar room in Arundel, Maine, and turned it into the most successful biker bar in New England history. So when people found out this guy that was such a good businessman, such a good entrepreneur, was willing to give that much money to this museum project, it has to be worthwhile. It's going to make it. So 2 weeks later, I got a check for $25,000. Then I said I could tell somebody, Well, Bentley gave us 40, and now we got 25 more. Well, here's 15, and 20, and 25, 30, 40. It just came rolling in. Pretty soon we had enough money. We didn't have enough to finish the building, but we had enough money that I stuck my neck out and said, let's go. We're gonna have a groundbreaking ceremony. And we sold basically participation in the groundbreaking ceremony for $25,000. You got a shovel with your name on it, you got in the picture, and you look at it as 13 people. Just multiply it out. So that's where this all came from. It came from the heart and soul of people who cared about automobile racing here in New England, people that really wanted to see the history of this sport saved. And that's our goal. We save the history, we share the history. So thank you for coming today. That's part of this deal. We want to share the past of what's happened here in New England. When you look around the walls at all these photographs, they're all New England. They're all New England people doing their thing at various racetracks in the United States, but really here in New England. So,
thank you.
well,
Thank you.
everybody that participated in this shares in what's here. This is not a one-man deal. This is a situation where a lot of people, including his father, who by the way is the president of the museum at this point. His dad walked in one day when we were painting the walls. We had a bunch of volunteers, me included, painting the walls, and he walked in with a paint roller and said, I don't want to help. Can I help you guys? Yeah, please do. End of the day, I'm set to throw the rollers away. He said, I'm going to take them home and clean them all. He came back the next day with clean rollers, and we kept painting. We took them all home. That went on for about a week. You'd be surprised how much paint we did. Yeah, we were buying this great paint in 5-gallon pails. But that's typical. I mean, we have one employee here, one, and everybody else, including me, volunteers. We get no pay. That's just do it because we love it. So, anyhow, thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for us from here at the New England Racing Museum. We actually got honored to get a awesome personal tour by a legend of NASCAR broadcasting, a longtime guy for Fox, Dick Berggren. Claudia didn't get a chance to really watch much when he was on TV, but I did, so that was really cool getting to be there with him on a one-on-one. Claudia, what was your thoughts here on his tour of the Racing Museum?
Yeah, hopefully the audio wasn't too bad. All the weather alerts were going off on everybody's phone, so you might hear beep, 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 throughout the video. But I think it was really cool. We timed it just right because we had just started looking around when he got on the microphone and was asking if anybody wants a tour. And then, I think it was better having a tour, because you learn more about these cars than just kind of reading about them and trying to figure out what things are.
Don't think just because I'm a YouTuber, DannyBTalks, don't think that it was just because of that. No, anyone can come here and get that same tour.
Yeah, he's a volunteer.
He's a volunteer here. He mentioned he's not an employee. He's actually just a volunteer here.
Yeah, they said they have one person on staff. Everybody else is volunteers.
So anyone, use this as your virtual tour, but come get an actual tour from these folks. They'd love to have you here.
Yeah, lots of different cars. I think that was neat, to see all different types of racing and from all different eras.
But we'll get a chance to go to the Cup race tomorrow. And until next time, we hope you guys have a great day. Bye, guys. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching this video from Danny B Talks. If you're new to my channel, make sure you leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so that you'll never miss another new video here on Danny B Talks. Until next time, I hope you have a great day. Bye, guys.